Well, if you're a parent, your kids are probably in bed by now. You'll get them up in the morning and send them off to school, assuming they'll come back safely. For some parents in the Louisa-Muscatine School District, that nearly didn't happen.
Yeah, back in November, several got a phone call. Their children's bus crashed. They needed to be picked up from the hospital. Tonight, we have exclusive video of the crash from inside that bus, and we hear from the students who lived through it.
TV6 investigative reporter Mark Stevens joins us now. And Mark, a terrifying experience for the kids and their parents.
Yes, when they heard rollover, the parents imagined their kids tumbling around as if they were inside a washing machine. And this never-before-seen video confirms it. These kids are sharing their experience for the first time, what it was like to be in a bus rollover. The parents have given us the okay to air it without blurring their identities, and this is video of a crash. It may not be appropriate for all viewers. November 18th started out like any other day for the kids riding bus 091.
Get up, get dressed, get my bag ready and eat breakfast, and then brush my teeth and wait for the bus.
Brothers Austin and Cale Cook watched for the bus to round the corner before walking to the end of their driveway. Cale was tired.
I didn't want to go to school that day, and my mom made me get on the bus.
The brothers boarded the bus around 7:30. Several others were already on.
I was just sitting in the front listening to music.
Matthew Krogstead and his sister Danielle, they've ridden the bus for years, like sophomore Dustin Swain Baker.
All school year, all school.
Peyton Young and his brother Cooper were among the last to get on. Their normal ended 2 minutes later.
I knew something was wrong as soon as the bus hit the turn to the right and he lost control, hit the sign. Then he tried to correct himself. He went to the left. When he tried to correct himself, the whole, I knew we were done. I don't really remember much of it because I blacked out. I just remember the bus hitting a sign and then going this way and then going that way and then it flipped.
When they turn on that corner, the trash can that one box it never moves over that much. It barely moves. It goes When we went off the road and we came back on and we went to the other side and I knew we got a wreck.
Dustin, he was thrown against me, against my side, and all the kids were probably thrown against my side of the bus, the driver's side.
Really scary, just to see all of your friends' eyes and everything, all terrified.
It went on, what? It went on its side, then it rolled into the ditch.
I kind of blacked out right when we hit the sign, because we slid over and we rolled and stuff, and it hurt really bad. I was in the front seat and I ended up in the fourth or fifth seat.
I think I hit my head and I smashed my shoulder into a window.
Driver Ricky Hines was held by his seat belt as the bus pitched onto its roof after sliding down the curve's embankment. When the bus stopped, all the kids are on its side. Dustin suffered the worst injury with a broken collarbone.
I just remember waking up just thinking, oh my God, my back hurts so much. And then, because when I first woke up, I was thinking, is this a dream? Because, I just woke up out of a bus accident.
Look at the video. The kids appear shocked. Help started arriving within minutes.
I was really numb.
The kids were taken to the hospital to wait for their parents to pick them up.
A million things went through my mind, as of my wife's, I could imagine.
We were lucky that the worst injury was a broken collarbone.
All went back to school within a few days. Superintendent Mike Van Sickle says half of the students along the route have not ridden the bus since. Many of the ones riding during the accident are back on, although they say it's still a little scary.
Sometimes we'll hit a really bumpy road and I'll grab the seat, but it's not I can ride the bus. It's fine.
We were really nervous and everything, especially when we ran around the corner. We all looked down there just this better not happen again, this better not happen again.
Do you even want to ride the school bus anymore?
No.
Wow. And speaking on all of us parents' behalf, I think a lot of us think, wow, our children are safe because we are told over and over again that school buses are among the safest thing out there. But this video and seeing the kids fly around makes you second guess that.
Well, first, you got to remember, school buses are designed to be very safe. I mean, when you think about where the kids were sitting in those compartments, that's why the seats are padded and they're very tall in the front and the rear. So if the bus gets hit in the front or the back, the kids are in a padded compartment. They have nowhere to go.
But we saw kids actually basically falling out of their seats and, you know, flying around the bus in this case.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to look at tomorrow, because the debate about seat belts is for those types of crashes, these rollovers and side impacts. And one thing to keep in mind is that they happen so rarely that there hasn't been such a big push on that from the safety agencies. I mean, Iowa gave us 10 years of data about 2,150 bus crashes. Only 24 of those were rollovers. Illinois is even lower. Over 4 years, they had 6,000 bus crashes, only 7 rollovers.
But if you're a parent with one child on one of those buses,
all it takes is
very
one.
concerning.
That's the debate tomorrow.
All right, looking forward to it, Mark. Thank you.
It's a terrible phone call to get. Parents of 10 students in Louisa Muscatine schools finding out their kids were in the hospital.
You saw the video from the November bus crash last night showing kids tossed around the bus. Now many are asking, why aren't school buses required to have seat belts? TV6 Investigates reporter Mark Stevens has been looking into that issue. Mark?
Yeah, the government's school bus rules date back to the 70s. They're designed around the idea of putting kids in a padded compartment. If a bus crashes in the front or the rear, children will be kept within those seats as the bus stops. But back in the mid-90s, safety researchers began looking at school bus accidents where the bus was hit on the side or rolled over. It found those compartments leave kids vulnerable.
I mean, just never thought about it. I mean, how many times has a bus rolled over?
Tanya Young didn't worry about the lack of seat belts on her kid's bus before the November accident. When she got that phone call, though,
First picture that went through my head was of the bus rolling over and the kids just tumbling around.
she and her husband Jason welcomed the idea of seat belts following the accident.
The main thing is just to get the kids safe. That's what we need. The kids have to be safe at all times.
Lived through it as a student and now as a superintendent as well.
Louisa Muscatine Superintendent Mike Van Sickle says his school bus tipped over in a ditch back in the 70s when he was in middle school.
I can feel for the kids who were involved because, yeah, it's a scary situation. I happened to land on my sister because I was on the side in which I slid.
He says after the November accident, his lead bus driver looked into the seatbelt issue. The information they gathered didn't reveal a lot.
You have two professional organizations having the same debate that we're having right here. and there you have it.
The National Transportation Safety Board studied 6 school bus crashes in 1999. It found the compartment strategy that's been in place since the 70s leaves passengers vulnerable when a bus gets hit on the side or rolls over. The kids fall out of the seats. NTSB issued 2 recommendations back then. First, study how to protect school bus passengers in all crash types. Second, require restraints to do the job. NTSB wanted it done in 2 years. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration began working on those studies, looking at cost, safety benefit, and use.
The seatbelts are used incorrectly, it's probably more harmful than good.
NHTSA ran its tests. In 2002, it declared the current compartment seating design safe. NHTSA's study found adding lap and shoulder belts could protect students, but NHTSA said they're too expensive to require on large school buses. 5 years later, NHTSA was asked again about seat belts. This time, it required lap and shoulder belts in small school buses, but it again ruled against requiring seat belts on large school buses because of the cost.
Just because the vehicle is large and painted yellow doesn't change the laws of physics.
Dr. Alan Ross leads the National Coalition for School Bus Safety. His group pushes for a mandate because without one, he says, school districts will never pay the added cost.
The problem with the public sector is it's the least common denominator. In other words, it's the cheapest bid that always gets the sale or the lease.
Seatbelt prices have gotten cheaper over the years. Seat manufacturers and school bus experts estimate adding seatbelts to a new bus adds between $3,000 and $8,000 to the sticker price. Trouble is, a new bus costs around $100,000.
It is kind of a hard sell.
Louisa Muscatine Superintendent Mike Van Sickle says his district buys 1 new bus every year. Right now, it only has one bus that is considered seatbelt ready. He says upgrading it would cost $29,000. And if there are seatbelts installed on the bus, Van Sickle feels he'd have to hire a bus monitor to make sure the kids wear them.
Almost a necessity to be able to keep track of the kids and being able to supervise them in any way, shape, or form.
Van Sickle's worry about seatbelt use is one question University of Alabama researchers wondered about. They studied seatbelt use in 2010 and found students would wear seatbelts on buses 62% of the time. Their research says seatbelts would help reduce the severity of injuries and reduce deaths. However, their study found replacing buses in Alabama over 10 years would cost $117 million. That far outweighed the estimated benefit of saving one life worth $38 million.
If there are studies that are non-debatable and can show that there's huge safety advantages to seatbelts, then that's when elected officials or hired officials like myself need to take those types of things and make policy or make law.
The majority of students involved in the Louisa-Muscatine bus crash say they would wear seatbelts, especially after being involved in a crash. The Youngs say they support the added cost.
The biggest thing is our kids are home tonight. They're safe. You know, we get to hold our kids.
And if they have to convince other taxpayers to cough up extra money, the Youngs feel it is a strong sell.
Or maybe they have grandchildren. Maybe they have a friend that has a child that rides the bus. Do they want that child to come home safe?
Yeah, every time you see that video, you think of what if my child was on that. So what about the NTSB recommendations? What's happening with that?
Well, they closed those years ago, and they're not happy about it because NHTSA basically never did the full testing that NTSB wanted. So they argue that we don't really know the answer about the cost and all the impacts of the seatbelts because without the full test, we don't know how much benefit there is.
Are there any states that require seatbelts in buses?
6 of them, actually. New York, California, Florida, Louisiana, Texas, and New Jersey. But the catch is with some of those states haven't actually funded the programs to put the seatbelts in, and some of them don't even require the students to wear them.
More on this tomorrow, Mark. Good work. We'll be right back.
Well, it is one of the most critical jobs in a school district, driving the bus that gets your child and others to and from school safely.
A bus crash in the Louisa County, Louisa-Muscatine district this past November pushed bus safety into the spotlight. Tonight, we look at the man behind the wheel, a man who was ticketed for failing to stay in control of that bus as it tumbled off the road. TV6 Investigates reporter Mark Stevens looked into his background and found that this is not his first ticket in a bus. Mark?
Police wrote Ricky Hines the same type of ticket back in May of 2014. He clipped a parked car while driving a school bus for the same district, Louisa-Muscatine. He pleaded not guilty, but didn't show up for his court dates and was fined. That's not the only ticket Hines has on his record, so we looked into how he got his job.
Mr. Hines subbed for us for a time, and during that subbing, you know, he showed very good safety.
Louisa-Muscatine Superintendent Mike Van Sickle says Ricky Hines was hired back in 2013. He was a substitute driver in the spring and did a good enough job that he earned a regular route in the fall.
If people show good consistency and safety in the sub-realm, then of course that's someone that we're also going to consider.
Hines passed the background check the school district is required to do. Iowa's law mandates school districts look at court records. Records TV6 Investigates checked show Hines has 9 traffic violations dating back to 1994. Were those red flags? TV6 Investigates asked Superintendent Van Sickle.
There has not been anybody that's applied that we've actually hired that has had something that, quote, I could not live with, or that showed up.
Some of Hines' prior convictions include operating without a registration, disobeying a traffic sign, and lacking financial liability coverage. The Iowa DOT told us none of those prior convictions threaten his commercial driver's license. In fact, the DOT told us half of the violations have fallen off Hines' driving record.
Most of the normal traffic violations will stay on a record for 5 years.
The DOT's Dennis Kleen says the only issue threatening Hines' commercial driver's license are his 2 school bus accidents. They happened within a 6-month period. If he has another accident in any vehicle through May,
at that point he could be considered a habitual violator, which is 3 or more moving violations in a 12-month period, and at that point he could be suspended.
A suspension would invalidate his commercial driver's license, barring him from driving a school bus. Hines resigned his job with the school district in December, although his CDL is still valid. Superintendent Van Sickle says Hines passed all the tests and his background check with no issues when he was hired. As far as the first school bus accident, the parked car incident back in May,
that was not a huge infraction, in my opinion.
Hines declined an on-camera interview when TV6 reached him by phone. He did say he was very sorry about the November accident, and he says seeing any school bus on the road tears him apart.
So, Mark, did anybody say this driver should not have been behind the wheel?
Not one. You know, as we reported, he passed all the checks. Even the parents of the kids who were on that bus said they felt sorry for him because they saw him in the hospital with their kids, too.
What about the rest of the bus drivers out there? How often is someone checking up on their records?
Well, it depends which state they work in. If they're working for an Illinois school district, obviously when they get hired, they'll get a check. And Illinois will look at 3 years worth of driving records and then do that every year. Iowa's a little different. They'll look at that stuff when the driver is hired, but then they've only been doing it every 2 years, and that's going to change because the license renewals are going to change. So those are going to look at between an 8-year period for minor things. Now, if something major were to happen that would go a violation of the CDL law, that gets reported immediately.
All right, good information, Mark. Thank you. Nice job in the series.